If you continue doing exactly what everyone around you is doing financially, your retirement outcome will almost certainly mirror theirs, not your aspirations. Statistically, that means there is roughly a 50% chance you will retire with less than $90,000 saved. Pause for a moment and let that number settle without comfort, without excuses, and without motivational noise softening it. This is not my opinion, and it is not a dramatic exaggeration designed to shock you into attention. These figures come directly from the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, released publicly in 2022. For Americans between 65 and 74 years old, median retirement savings stands at approximately $87,000. The bottom half of retirees hold little to nothing beyond their monthly Social Security benefit. After 40 years of working, commuting, sacrificing, and paying taxes, that is the financial destination many people reach. In 2024, the average retired worker receives about $1,907 per month from Social Security. Combine modest savings with that benefit, and you are looking at roughly $2,200 per month total. Bereitend, after 4 decades of discipline and labor, that is the system's standard reward for millions of Americans. Ask yourself directly and honestly, does that sound like financial freedom to you? Does that number represent independence, flexibility, or real control over how you spend your final decades? Or does it sound more like survival, carefully packaged and labeled as stability? If you prefer uncomfortable truth over soft encouragement, press like and stay with this analysis. Comment your age below because context matters when we are discussing financial trajectory. This conversation is not emotional, it is structural, mathematical, and brutally consistent. Most retirees who end up with $87,000 genuinely believed they were financially responsible. They had steady employment, contributed to a 401k plan, and often owned a home. They were not reckless, not bankrupt, not careless, just financially average and system compliant. Most of those people truly believed they were doing enough because their lives looked stable from the outside. They had income coming in, bills paid on time, and a retirement account quietly growing in the background. They were not living irresponsibly, and that is exactly why the outcome feels so unfair. The danger is not chaos. The danger is comfort that feels responsible but produces mediocre results. Fidelity recommends having 1 times your income saved by 30, 3 times by 40, and 6 times by 50. By age 67, the recommendation rises to roughly 10 times your annual income invested and compounding. Yet the median American approaching retirement does not even reach 3 times income in savings. That gap between recommendation and reality is wider than most people are willing to confront. You may feel stable, but stability is not the same as preparedness. Feeling fine today does not guarantee financial resilience 20 years from now. The distance between "I think I am okay" and "I am mathematically secure" is enormous. And that distance compounds silently, year after year, without asking for your permission. The first dangerous illusion is believing that saving 5% of income is enough. 5% feels disciplined because it requires sacrifice compared to saving nothing at all. But mathematically, 5% is often just a delayed version of underprepared. Imagine earning $60,000 annually and saving 5% consistently for 35 years. At a 7% average return, you might accumulate roughly $450,000. Now increase that savings rate to 15% under the same income and same timeline. Suddenly, you are approaching or exceeding $1 million through the power of compounding. Same salary, same economy, same market returns, completely different behavior, and radically different retirement outcome. The difference between saving 5% and 15% is not income level. It is personal standards, discipline, and long-term financial intention. 5% feels responsible because it separates you from people saving nothing at all and gives you emotional comfort. But mathematically, 5% often guarantees a retirement outcome that remains frustratingly average and structurally fragile. It provides psychological relief today while quietly limiting your freedom decades from now. The second dangerous illusion is telling yourself you will catch up later when life feels more stable. People promise aggressive saving after promotions, after bonuses, after debts shrink, after responsibilities ease. But compound growth does not adjust itself to your delayed decisions or optimistic future discipline. If you begin investing at 25, roughly $300 per month can grow toward $500,000 by 65. Time does the heavy lifting, because compounding works quietly and relentlessly for 4 uninterrupted decades. Start instead at 45, and that required contribution can exceed $1,100 per month. You are now compressing decades of potential growth into a narrow and unforgiving timeline. Most households realistically cannot quadruple their savings rate during their mid-40s without significant stress. Financial obligations peak, flexibility decreases, and risk tolerance shrinks dramatically. Catching up sounds empowering in theory, but it becomes brutal when measured against actual numbers. Delaying serious investing is never neutral. It carries measurable and compounding financial consequences. Every year postponed increases the monthly sacrifice required to reach the same retirement target. The third illusion is believing Social Security will comfortably sustain your lifestyle through retirement. Social Security was designed as a financial floor to prevent poverty, not to preserve comfort. In 2024, the average monthly retirement benefit remains around $1,907. In many regions, housing expenses alone can consume nearly that entire monthly payment. When housing alone absorbs most of your monthly benefit, every remaining expense becomes a negotiation between dignity and survival. Healthcare, food, transportation, utilities, and insurance do not shrink simply because your paycheck disappears. Inflation continues moving forward each year, silently eroding fixed income with mathematical indifference. This is where the gap between median savings and a comfortable retirement becomes painfully undeniable. The top 25% of retirees hold more than $500,000 in invested retirement assets. The top 10% exceed $1 million, creating flexibility, security, and genuine decision-making power. Not all of those individuals were surgeons, executives, or founders earning extraordinary salaries. Many were middle-income earners who simply committed to saving around 15% consistently for decades. They avoided cashing out during downturns and refused to panic sell when markets declined. They understood that compounding rewards patience more reliably than intelligence or market timing. Subtuity. Retirement does not primarily reward brilliance. It rewards sustained, disciplined consistency over long horizons. Markets fluctuate. Headlines provoke fear, yet disciplined investors continue contributing without interruption. The system quietly advantages those who execute monthly contributions regardless of emotional turbulence. Meanwhile, median behavior produces median outcomes with mechanical and predictable precision. The cost of delay becomes even more sobering when healthcare expenses enter the equation. Fidelity estimates that a retired couple in 2024 may require approximately $315,000 for healthcare alone. That estimate excludes extended long-term care, chronic illness, or catastrophic medical complications. Now place $315,000 beside a median retirement balance of $87,000. The difference between those figures represents years of stress compressed into late life. No dramatic music is required. The numbers themselves carry enough weight. The numbers are not emotional. They are structural, and structural forces shape your future regardless of how optimistic you feel today. Right now, you are already moving along a financial trajectory toward either flexibility and autonomy or constraint and quiet dependence. If you are between 25 and 30 years old, time is the most powerful asset you currently possess. At that age, consistency matters far more than income level because compounding amplifies disciplined behavior across decades. Every invested dollar in your 20s carries exponential weight compared to money deployed later in life. Delaying 5 years at 25 costs opportunity, but delaying 5 years at 45 costs structural advantage. If you are between 35 and 45, you are standing inside the most decisive financial decade of your life. This window determines whether retirement becomes a choice-driven phase or a cost-controlled survival strategy. Your savings rate during these years influences outcomes far more aggressively than most people realize. Small increases in disciplined contribution today can eliminate disproportionate stress 20 years from now. If you are over 50, optimism without action becomes a dangerous form of financial denial. At this stage, your strategy must shift from passive hope to intentional, measurable execution. Cutting unnecessary expenses is no longer about minimalism or aesthetics. It becomes structural risk management. Increasing savings even modestly can still move the needle, but hesitation becomes extremely expensive. Postponing serious financial adjustment for another 5 years is not neutral in mathematical terms. Those 5 years represent lost compounding that no later intensity can fully replicate. If you are saving less than 10% of your income, that reality deserves direct confrontation. Awareness without behavioral change keeps you locked inside median financial outcomes. If you are between 30 and 40 and saving under 10%, comment "Wake Up" below. Recognition is the beginning of identity shift, and identity determines long-term financial architecture. Wertreist. Median outcomes are not accidents or bad luck. They are the predictable consequence of median habits repeated quietly and consistently over several decades. If you behave financially like the average person around you, you should logically expect results that resemble theirs. This is not criticism of your intelligence. It is recognition of statistical gravity acting on behavioral patterns. Average savings rates, average spending decisions, and average risk tolerance generate average retirement balances with mechanical precision. You do not accidentally drift into financial independence. You drift into whatever your habits reinforce every single month. Kaiso. Identity shapes behavior. Behavior compounds over time, and compounding converts identity into financial reality. If you see yourself as someone who saves only when convenient, your future will mirror that standard. When you redefine yourself as someone who invests regardless of mood or market noise, outcomes begin to diverge. Wealth is less about intellectual brilliance and more about refusing to violate your own financial principles. The market consistently rewards disciplined execution far more reliably than emotional enthusiasm or short-term excitement. Every automated contribution becomes a structural vote for the financially disciplined version of yourself. Every skipped investment reinforces hesitation and normalizes compromise within your long-term strategy. Median behavior feels safe because it aligns with social norms and shared expectations within your environment. But social norms rarely optimize for independence. They optimize for comfort and conformity. If you genuinely want a different retirement outcome, you must tolerate temporary behavioral discomfort. Dortar. Increasing your savings rate may require driving a cheaper vehicle or delaying visible lifestyle upgrades. Those adjustments are not deprivation. They are strategic reallocations toward future autonomy. Financial freedom is rarely built through dramatic breakthroughs. It is built through relentless, consistent execution. The gap between $87,000 and $1 million is accumulated discipline expressed numerically. After 40 years of work, you will receive exactly what your financial architecture has engineered. Dui Drower. $88,000 is not fate or bad luck. It is the accumulated invoice for decades of financially default decisions. Living on financial autopilot feels harmless because it avoids confrontation with uncomfortable trade-offs and delayed gratification. But autopilot always follows the statistical median, and the median rarely produces freedom or optionality. You can pay that invoice later through constrained choices and careful budgeting in retirement. Or you can redesign your system now while time still amplifies disciplined decisions. Financial architecture is not constructed in your 60s. It is built silently through thousands of earlier behaviors. Every additional percentage point saved today permanently shifts your long-term compounding curve upward. Every year you delay redesigning your financial structure narrows the space available for meaningful correction. You are not constrained by intelligence, talent, or background. You are constrained by repeated design choices. Design can always be changed, but change requires sustained execution rather than temporary motivation. Koisidiu. Continuing to operate at average standards guarantees statistically predictable retirement outcomes. Raising your standards above the median immediately separates your trajectory from the majority. The financial system does not reward hope, intention, or positive thinking. It rewards consistent capital allocation. Retirement freedom is not emotional language. It is the result of disciplined numerical execution. After 40 years of work, your balance sheet will reflect your standards more clearly than your job title. Yuta, you will not receive what you wished for or imagined. You will receive what you systematically engineered. If that realization feels heavy, understand that heaviness signals awareness, not defeat. Awareness only becomes power when it transforms into measurable behavioral adjustments. Comment your age and current savings rate below, because clarity begins with confronting real numbers. Share this with someone between 35 and 45 who still believes time will compensate for inaction. Subscribing to conversations like this is not passive consumption. It is a decision to continuously elevate your financial standards beyond social averages. Most people avoid this level of clarity because it threatens the comforting belief that they are already doing enough. But comfort without mathematical validation becomes one of the most expensive illusions a person can maintain. Validation requires hard numbers, contribution percentages, asset allocation, and honest comparison against long-term retirement benchmarks. You do not need immediate perfection tomorrow, but you absolutely require a direction supported by consistent execution. Increasing your savings rate by even 3 to 5 percentage points compounds into substantial long-term structural advantage. Automating investments removes emotional interference and replaces it with disciplined financial architecture. Preventing lifestyle inflation ensures your future self does not inherit unnecessary financial obligations. Choosing long-term ownership over short-term consumption compounds into quiet but undeniable leverage. Individually, these adjustments appear small, but collectively, they redefine your entire retirement trajectory. Kosyu, the median path feels comfortable because it is socially validated and rarely challenged within your environment. The disciplined path feels isolating because fewer individuals commit to sustained financial restraint over decades. Yet restraint today converts directly into optionality tomorrow, and optionality is the foundation of autonomy. Imagine entering retirement with decision-making power instead of calculating every expense with tension. Imagine healthcare costs existing as manageable line items rather than looming structural threats. Imagine housing as a preference determined by choice, not by limited fixed income. That version of retirement is not fantasy or luck. It is mathematics aligned with disciplined behavior. The difference between $87,000 and $1 million is accumulated standards expressed numerically. After 40 years of disciplined labor, your financial outcome will mirror the system you built. The only unresolved question is whether you will consciously redesign that system starting now. Most people assume there will be a future moment when motivation finally feels powerful enough to justify dramatic financial change. But transformation rarely begins with emotion. It begins with disciplined repetition executed under ordinary, unremarkable conditions. Waiting to feel completely ready is another refined form of delay disguised as responsible preparation. The market does not reward emotional readiness. It rewards consistent participation sustained across long, uneventful stretches of time. Every month you contribute consistently, you strengthen a financial structure that compounds quietly beneath the surface. Traits. Every month you hesitate reinforces the same behavioral pattern that produced the median outcome you claim to avoid. There is no dramatic financial rescue at 65 that compensates for decades of passive design. There is only arithmetic, reflecting your accumulated standards back to you without judgment or sympathy. If that reality feels severe, understand that mathematics is indifferent rather than cruel. Indifference means the outcome remains fully responsive to disciplined behavior beginning immediately. You cannot revise past decades, but you can significantly alter the slope of your future trajectory. Raising your savings rate, automating investments, and protecting capital from emotional decisions are structural corrections. Structural corrections compound into resilience, and resilience compounds into genuine long-term optionality. Optionality is the measurable difference between retiring on your own terms and adjusting to permanent financial constraint. The median retiree accepts available limitations. The disciplined retiree operates from multiple viable choices. Choice is the real currency accumulated through decades of consistent alignment between intention and execution. After 40 years of disciplined labor, you will not receive sympathy. You will receive results. Results are the direct translation of identity, standards, and sustained capital allocation. The relevant question is not whether the system is fair. It is whether your strategy is deliberate. Beginning today, you can either defend your existing habits or upgrade them without negotiation. 40 years from now, your retirement will not reflect your intentions. It will reflect your repeated financial behavior compounded over time. The difference between dependence and autonomy will be measured not in hope, but in accumulated capital and preserved discipline. No speech, no inspiration, and no late surge of motivation can replace decades of structured execution. If you continue operating at median standards, the median outcome will meet you without surprise or apology. If you elevate your standards now, the divergence from the majority begins immediately and compounds silently. $88,000 is not a curse. It is a predictable endpoint for predictable behavior. $1 million is not magic. It is disciplined consistency expressed numerically across long horizons. After 40 years of work, stress, and responsibility, you will receive exactly what your financial architecture demanded. Comment your age and current savings rate below, because clarity begins with confronting unfiltered numbers. You can live by default and accept the invoice later, or redesign your system and control the outcome. Point.